Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering something impossible. Every road leading out of your town has disappeared. There are no highways, there are no trains, no neighboring cities a few hours away. If you want to visit another town, you'll need an airplane, a helicopter, or a boat. Now, imagine this isn't an emergency. This is simply normal life. For more than 56,000 people, this has always been normal. They live in Greenland, the world's largest island, a place where more than 80% of the land is buried beneath a gigantic sheet of ice, a place where winter darkness can last for weeks, a place that looks almost impossible for humans to inhabit. Yet thousands of people don't just survive here. They call it home. And that raises an extraordinary question. Why? Why would anyone choose to live here? The answer has nothing to do with adventure. It has nothing to do with bravery. It has everything to do with being human. Because Greenland isn't really a story about ice. It's a story about people. People who learned to survive where nature seems impossible. People who turned isolation into identity. And people who may teach the rest of us something we've forgotten. This is Greenland, and this is life at the edge of Earth. This is Edge of Earth, where maps end, stories begin. And today, we start in Greenland. Most people imagine Greenland as an empty, white wilderness. But that couldn't be further from the truth. More than 56,000 people live here, and almost all of them live along the coastline. Nobody lives in the center. In fact, if you flew over Greenland, you'd quickly notice something unusual. There are no giant highways, no sprawling suburbs, no megacities. Instead, you'll find colorful towns hugging the ocean. That's because the ocean is life. The people of Greenland are mostly Inuit, or of mixed Inuit and Danish ancestry. Their ancestors arrived thousands of years ago, crossing the Arctic from North America, long before airplanes existed, long before modern nations existed. Humans were already living here, but surviving was never easy. Nature controlled everything. The ocean determined what you ate. The weather determined whether you traveled. And the seasons determined how you lived. Yet, generation after generation stayed. Why? Because this wasn't an obstacle. This was home. That's something many of us struggle to understand. We often think home is where life is easiest. But for many Greenlanders, home is where your grandparents lived. It's where your traditions survive. It's where your language still exists. It's where your memories belong, and that changes everything. Now, let's talk about what makes Greenland one of the most isolated places on Earth. Because this fact surprises almost everyone. There are no roads connecting Greenland's towns, none. You cannot drive from one city to another, not because nobody built roads, but because geography simply doesn't allow it. Massive mountains, deep fjords, endless ice. Building a nationwide highway system here would be extraordinarily difficult and expensive. So, Greenland evolved differently. Each community became its own world. Airplanes became highways, boats became buses. The ocean became a road, and weather became the boss. A snowstorm can delay flights. Sea ice can change travel plans. Sometimes, life simply pauses. Imagine telling someone in New York, "Sorry, I can't come today. The weather says, maybe tomorrow." That's normal here. In Greenland, nature still makes the rules. But physical isolation isn't the only challenge. Psychological isolation may be even harder. Humans evolved in connected societies. We like movement. We like options. We like convenience. Greenland offers very little of that. There are no spontaneous road trips, no weekend drives, no giant shopping malls. Sometimes the nearest town feels farther away than another country. Yet, something interesting happens. People become deeply connected to their communities. Neighbors matter. Relationships matter. Because in a place like this, nobody truly survives alone. The environment quietly forces people to depend on one another. And perhaps that's one reason visitors often describe Greenland as peaceful. Life here moves slower, not because people are lazy, but because nature demands patience. Modern society often teaches us to move faster. Greenland teaches the opposite. Slow down, wait, adapt. So, How do humans actually survive here? The answer begins with the ocean. For thousands of years, the sea has been Greenland's lifeline. Fishing remains one of the country's most important industries. Communities depend heavily on Arctic waters, but modern survival is much more complicated. Imagine opening a grocery store here. Almost every product must travel enormous distances. Ships, cargo planes, long supply chains, every item arrives with a hidden cost: a simple carton of milk, fresh fruit, building materials, medicine. Everything has to fight geography before reaching your doorstep. Yet, life continues. Children still go to school. Families still gather for dinner. Teenagers still dream about the future. Life here isn't frozen in time. It is modern. But it is modern on Greenland's terms. And that may be the most remarkable thing about this place. Humans didn't conquer Greenland. They negotiated with it. They adapted to it. They accepted its limits. And in doing so, they built a life at the very edge of the world. But another question is beginning to emerge. What happens when this world starts to change? Because Greenland is changing faster than almost anywhere else on Earth. And that change may affect every single one of us. For thousands of years, Greenland seemed permanent. The ice was always there. The seasons followed familiar patterns, and communities adapted to a world that changed slowly. But today, something different is happening. The Arctic is warming faster than most other regions on Earth, and Greenland is at the center of that change. To understand why this matters, imagine Greenland not as an island, but as a giant reservoir of frozen water. Beneath us lies the Greenland Ice Sheet, one of the largest bodies of ice on the planet. In some places, the ice is more than 2 miles thick. It has accumulated over countless generations of snowfall, compressed into ice over thousands of years. For most of human history, this enormous frozen landscape appeared almost untouchable. Yet, in recent decades, scientists have observed increasing ice loss from Greenland Glaciers that once advanced steadily are retreating. Melt seasons are becoming longer in many regions, and every summer, rivers of meltwater flow across the ice before disappearing into deep fractures below. For people living here, climate change is not an abstract political debate. It is something they can see, something they can measure, something they discuss with neighbors. Hunters report changes in sea ice conditions. Fishermen notice shifting patterns in the ocean. Communities that relied on predictable winter conditions must constantly adapt. The challenge is not simply that temperatures are rising. The challenge is uncertainty. Human beings can adapt to difficult environments. What is harder is adapting to environments that no longer behave as expected. Imagine planning your year around ice that may or may not arrive, around weather that no longer follows familiar rules, around coastlines that gradually change. This is becoming reality for many Arctic communities. Yet, Greenland is not only experiencing change, it is also becoming increasingly important. As Arctic waters become more accessible during parts of the year, governments and businesses around the world are paying closer attention. Suddenly, one of the most isolated places on Earth is attracting global interest. And that creates an entirely new question. What happens when a place that was once forgotten becomes strategically important? For generations, life in Greenland followed a familiar rhythm. Children grew up. They learned local traditions. They built families. And many remained in the communities where they were born. But today, young Greenlanders face a choice their grandparents never faced: stay or leave. Modern technology has connected Greenland to the rest of the world in ways previous generations could never imagine. A teenager in Nuuk can watch the same videos, follow the same trends, and communicate with the same people as someone in New York, London, or Tokyo. The world feels closer than ever, yet geography remains unchanged. Opportunities can still be limited. Many students leave Greenland to pursue higher education. Others move abroad for specialized careers. Some return, some never do. And this creates an important question for Greenland's future. How do you preserve a unique way of life while participating in a rapidly globalizing world? This is not a challenge unique to Greenland. Similar questions are being asked in remote communities across the planet. But here, the issue feels especially urgent. Small populations are vulnerable. Every family matters. Every generation matters. Every decision matters. If too many young people leave, communities can struggle to maintain schools, services, and local traditions. Yet asking people to stay simply for tradition is not a realistic solution. Young people want opportunities. They want choices. They want futures that match their ambitions. And there is nothing unusual about that. The real challenge is creating conditions where people do not feel forced to choose between opportunity and identity, between success and belonging, between the future and home. For Greenland, that may become one of the defining questions of the 21st century. Most people will never visit Greenland. Most people will never experience Arctic darkness. They will never cross frozen fjords. They will never wait for weather to determine whether travel is possible. Yet, Greenland has something important to teach all of us. Modern society often celebrates speed, faster transportation, faster communication, faster delivery, faster decisions, faster livers. We have built entire economies around eliminating delay, around reducing friction, around maximizing convenience. Greenland operates differently. Here, nature still sets limits. Flights are delayed by storms. Oceans determine transportation. Seasons influence daily life. People must adapt rather than dominate. And perhaps that is why Greenland feels so different. It reminds us of a truth that modern life often hides. Human beings are not separate from nature. We are part of it. No matter how advanced our technology becomes, we remain connected to the environments we inhabit. Greenland also teaches something about resilience. For thousands of years, people survived here without modern infrastructure. without highways, without global supply chains, without the conveniences many of us consider essential. They succeeded because communities worked together. Knowledge was shared. Skills were passed from one generation to the next. Adaptation became a way of life. In many ways, Greenland represents one of humanity's oldest strengths: the ability to adjust, to endure, and to build meaning, even in difficult environments. That lesson may be more valuable today than ever before. When most people look at Greenland, they see ice, they see distance, they see isolation, they see a place that appears empty. But look a little closer, and a different picture emerges. Families, communities, traditions, stories, lives unfolding in one of the most extraordinary environments on Earth. Greenland is not remarkable because it is frozen. It is remarkable because people chose to build a home here, against the odds, across generations, in partnership with a landscape that has always demanded respect. And perhaps that is the real story. Not the ice, not the climate, not the geography, the people. Because wherever humans go, we do something remarkable. We adapt, we create communities, we find meaning, we transform unfamiliar places into home, even at the very edge of the world. And maybe that is why places like Greenland matter. Not because they are different from us, but because they remind us who we are.